Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished and senior professional from Mumbai, India, Mr. Deepak Narayanan. Deepak, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh, for the gracious introductions. Just before we went live, we were sharing about the phenomenal reach that your podcasts have made, and I want to personally congratulate you before we start the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Deepak is the founder and chief executive officer of Practus, an organization which is on a mission to disrupt the consulting industry to help customers solve business problems using technology as an enabler to improve profitability, cash flow, and enterprise valuations. So, Deepak, before we talk about Practus, tell me a little bit about your own journey that led to the founding of Practus.
So, I've only known consulting ever since I started working, Ashutosh. So, I spent time with two large consulting firms before founding Practus. But from my own standpoint, from a personal journey standpoint, my father used to work for a bank. Very normal upbringing, like most like most Indians. At that point in time, today I think there is a lot more wealth in India, right, and a lot more privileges associated. But ours was very simple, very standard. Father used to get transferred every 3 years because because banks made him do that. So my schooling was from 6 states until a point in time when my mom and all of us told that we are not traveling with you anymore. So poor thing, he ended up doing these transfers till he retired.
Yeah.
And we stayed back in one city, right? And which is where I completed my schooling. I did my college, finished my CA, started working, and then in 2005 I moved back to Bombay. Worked for another global consulting firm for about 2.5 years, and in 2007, middle of 2007, is when I co-founded Wealth Tree. It was called at that point in time because we didn't get an equivalent of Kalpavruksha, right? The tree that grants all your wishes when you stand underneath it. So we said Wealth Tree, and we were helping overseas companies which wanted to set up operations in India. This was all about India entry. India was still a complex country culturally from the standpoint of doing business back in 2007. And my co-founder, or the person who founded this, and I joined him later, he had India entry experience. So he was a CFO of two Fortune 500 companies. He had set them up in India, and he said, okay, this is probably going to be the next big opportunity for companies, right? So that's how the whole story began. We didn't do what we were doing at this point in time, what we are doing at this point in time, back in 2007. But as they say, you just learn as you go along, things evolve, and here we are.
Absolutely. And of course, as they say, the rest is history, right?
Rest is history, yes.
Absolutely. So, Deepak, when you talk about your mission to disrupt the consulting industry, what does that mean to you?
Okay, so when I started with consulting, I think I was this blue-eyed boy, right, with amazed at the quality and the size of companies that I was working with. Until the time that I became an entrepreneur, I had not worked or consulted a single Indian company. So my worldview or perspective about everything and anything was about these big organizations, large size problems that we were trying to solve. And mostly, I think they on a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably at 7 or 8 already in terms of maturity, processes, systems, strategy, people, governance. And herein the problem lay, right? So when I came out and when I started looking at companies which were not of the same not of the same caliber, I started thinking, why do these companies even exist? I mean, why? What are they doing? What are they doing out there? I had a very myopic worldview. And this is when it gave me the time to reflect, because now I had to go and make a difference to the lives of some of these entrepreneurs and the journeys of these companies. I started looking back and I saw that when consulting kind of evolved, it was parallel to the industrial revolution. And the industrial revolution was all about paying workers by the hour for the work that they did, right? So there was something. So companies had fixed that you work for X number of hours, you got paid by the hour, and all the industries that came or evolved at that point in time were also set up in that manner, and so was consulting. So till today, it is about the number of hours and the hourly rate that is being charged by most consulting firms. I said that that's not the way consulting should run. Why is it that you're not attaching any kind of outcomes
Hmm.
to the effort that consultants are putting? I agree that they don't have full control over trying to change the outcomes, but they do have a significant influence. They can influence the entrepreneur, the CEOs, to be able to drive it in a particular direction. And therefore, we started saying that there is a need for disruption in this industry. Too few players have dominated the global consulting space, and the business model has remained the same. So we came up with this concept called as ROI, which is to promise an ROI right at the beginning of an engagement. Even before you take on an engagement, you study the company, you do some kind of an assessment with them, and tell them what exactly they are going to get in terms of growing revenues, improving profits, cash flows, or enterprise valuation, and you commit it to them,
Right.
right? And once you commit, work towards it, work with them to get it realized, right? So
Hmm.
that's the disruption that we are trying to cause.
Fascinating. And you also talk about using technology. Tell me a little bit on how you leverage technology.
Okay. So as a disclaimer, Ashutosh, technology, while I respect technology, I don't think technology can solve all the problems in the world, especially problems which involve judgment. Okay, context. So, for example, this conversation that we are having, I don't think we can make a bot. However, how much ever information you feed the
Hmm.
bot is not going to have this conversation because it lacks the context.
Correct.
It also lacks judgment,
Hmm.
right? So I think we are very, very far away from both these aspects, both on the context as well as on the judgment side.
Hmm.
And therefore, I believe that technology cannot solve for these two.
Hmm.
And therefore, I think as an organization, we are focused on business problems.
Hmm.
Can I help CEOs? Can I help CXOs solve business problems that are plaguing them on a day-to-day basis, right? And technology is only an enabler. So I don't own the technology. I am not a technology first company. I am not an AI company. But I can work with technology tool companies, product companies, technology providers in order to align what I am doing in terms of problem solving. Okay, so that's where technology comes in. So I could be working with an ERP, I could be working with a Gen AI solution, I could be working with a business intelligence tool, I could be doing work on reverse auctioning.
Hmm.
Uh, so all of this requires intellect. All of this requires you to understand the context, the problem, the personalities involved, change management, and then you bring technology in the context of all of these factors.
Hmm. And do you have any specific sectors or industries that you specialize in, or are you sector agnostic?
So we are more organized on the basis of functions.
Hmm.
So whether it is strategy, whether it is operations, people, finance, manufacturing, supply chain. Right now, I think we have built the organization in that manner. In terms of sectors, we are largely agnostic, but there are some sectors which we typically do not do. For example, we don't work with the government at all, Ashutosh.
Hmm.
Both in India and overseas, we don't work with the government. We also don't work with sectors that are seen to be an ally of the government, like defense, for
Hmm.
instance. Um, in some countries, telecom, right? In some countries, there are some sectors which are exclusively run by the government. For example, in India, I mean, defense is a case in point. But even if you look at sectors like aviation or a telecom, there is a heavy government influence
Correct.
on the sector. So these are sectors that we generally try to stay away, because you also see that there are one, two, or three players which
Hmm.
dominate the market. And there is very little that you could kind of that is at least our belief that you could try and do.
Hmm.
But sectors which has got private capital, whether it is pharma, whether it's engineering, FMCG, e-commerce, services, right? So those are sectors that we think we have a natural affinity towards, because the growth trajectory for these sectors are immense.
Hmm.
And the problems are also immense, right?
Right.
In some cases, they are also not developed. So I think it gives you a fantastic opportunity to work with some of these companies and try and help them to scale.
Well said. You've also been recognized, Deepak, for developing an ROI framework. Tell me a little bit about this framework and how does it add value to your clients?
Yeah. So this is something I was telling you, Ashutosh, that the ROI is a mantra. If you look at our website, it says ROI by Practus. Okay, so we want to really put it out there to tell people that ROI is not a myth. It's not a marketing jargon, but this is something that we live by, right? So all the people, for example, when we pick them up from wherever, whether they come from consulting or whether they come from the industry, we almost need to do some kind of a change management with them, right? To change their own DNA, to say that how do you fit into an ROI culture? Now, ROI simply means that am I adding enough value to grow a client's revenue, profits, cash flows, improve cash flows, or enhance enterprise valuation for them. Now, the framework really breaks it down into different functions, right? So let's say if it is supply chain, and within supply chain, if I've got to improve logistics cost, then what are the parameters that will help me to improve or reduce logistics cost as part of my ROI framework? And then we kind of track it against each of those parameters,
Right.
right? So that's the way we kind of monitor. And when I say we track it, value is assigned. Okay, so let's say warehouse optimization as a line item in logistics cost reduction. Uh, we put down a value. Let's say it's $1 million. We put down a value and then we track that value against what we are able to achieve over a period of time. That's the way we kind of do the ROI framework. It's digitized. It is actually visible to clients. We give access to clients. Clients can see how much of ROI they're getting out of this. There is also a sign-off mechanism because sometimes clients may disagree. I may say that it is 1 million. Clients may come back and say there is zero value. There is zero ROI that you've added. Or the ROI is only 200,000. It's not 1 million. So it allows a healthy debate between us and the client. And the client is being a significant stakeholder. It is important to involve the client in these decisions.
Well said. When I was researching you and preparing for my conversation, you also speak about a 5x and a 10x ROI for a client. Are there any specific industries where you have achieved something like this? And if so, can you give me an example of one of your case studies without any names, of course?
Sure. So one of the largest e-commerce companies, okay, here I think the ROI would be 20-25x, Ashutosh. So the 5 to 10 is probably a median range for us. Some of it would be lower, some of it would be higher. But our endeavor is to make sure that we at least deliver at 1x, because 1x is the fee that we charge a client. So at least a 1x is what we aim for. But the median has always been between 5 and 10. Okay, so on the example, one of the largest e-commerce companies, they had a reverse logistics issue. As you are aware, the cost of reverse logistics is 4 times more than the cost of forward logistics, right? There is no mechanism from a supply chain standpoint, or it is not as evolved, where when materials or when goods are returned from the consumer back to the e-commerce company, the entire logistics chain is not as well developed as it is with forward logistics. Now, one is their reverse logistics cost was 4x, but it was also highest in the industry. It was twice than the nearest competitor that they had. Now, how do you solve for this? First is to recognize what is causing the reverse logistics problem. So one, it is caused by customer behavior. Today, customers can return goods at their will, correct? The guy who collects it doesn't necessarily check whether the material is damaged or not, whether this is what they wanted or they have used it and they're returning it, right? So there are issues there. The second issue is whether your logistics itself is set up appropriately. So where is your nearest warehouse? For instance, if the forward logistics came from point A to point B, is the reverse logistics also going to point A, or is it going to the nearest warehouse? Okay, that can reduce your the cost of logistics. Third, do you have the mechanism to even track what's going on? If you do not have the mechanism, or you're not detecting the patterns, then you're going to just these problems are going to keep recurring, okay, and you're not going to be able to solve the problem. And fourth, how do we change customer behavior? If you are able to predict based on the PIN code or based on the number of returns that this customer is doing, can you start charging the customer, or can you start saying that this customer is not eligible for a return? Okay, so you got to make some changes on the ground in order to be able to solve this problem. So we brought in a series of solutions which kind of help this company to detect the problem, analyze the problem, and then finally put in place mechanisms to kind of reduce their reverse logistics costs significantly. I think this is an example, and this kind of delivered a phenomenal return for them, because the kind of fee that they paid us and what they were able to get out of an exercise like this was, I mean, there was no comparison at all in terms of the return.
Well said. Deepak, you also work across 10 different countries. How do you manage to maintain consistency in the quality of service across diverse geographies?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Ashutosh. To be honest, you grapple with it, okay? Because in consulting, I think one of the biggest variables is people. It's also a strength, it's also a weakness. Okay, and human beings are very hard to confine within a certain framework, especially I think in a consulting industry where I think problems are not the same. You go to one company in the same industry may have a set of problems, but but a different company in the same industry could have a different set of problems. The people may be different in both the cases, right? So you are ultimately, I think, you're working with organizations, you're working with people, and therefore there is no cookie cutter solution in terms of putting together a quality framework or mechanism. What at best you can do, and possibly I still don't know whether what we are doing is the best, is to have quality control or quality assurance mechanisms being put in place. So we have a project management or a quality assurance tool that allows us to not just track progress from a project management standpoint, but it also allows us to determine whether the quality that is being delivered on these projects is adequate or not. Now, you may ask how. For instance, let's say if weekly reviews are not done, then the system kind of flags it off, saying weekly review here was not done. Right. Similarly, meeting with the CEO or with the sponsor is not done once a month or once a fortnight, depending upon what we have agreed. Then again, the system flags off. It is impossible for anyone to go in and check every single deliverable that you might have gone and given to a client. But what we track is behaviors, right? Whether if some of those behaviors are followed consistently and over a period of time, then I think it allows you to pick up early warning signals and therefore go in and intervene and try and see if you can retrieve or you can improve the situation on the ground. But if you're not able to do that, then I think it's gone. I mean, you're headed for a front-on collision.
Well said. And again, another question relating to operating in different countries is how do you adapt to different cultures and very different market dynamics in different markets?
Correct. So one common thing that we have done, Ashutosh, is that we have worked largely only in Anglophile countries, right? Countries which speak English, or countries which have English as the primary language. So language as a complexity we have taken out. Maybe we have done some work in France or in Saudi Arabia or in some of these places. But largely, I think I would say, and even in Saudi, I think English is the mode of is the language of choice. Right. But even in some of the European countries or even in Russia and Ukraine, we did some work there. So these are exceptions more than the norm. Largely, our work has been in Anglophile countries because we believe that it's easier for us from a complexity reduction standpoint. That's one. Second, I think the project management system, regardless of where our projects are operational, cuts across. So people actually have to use the project management or the quality assurance system to be able to do it. Third, I think we use a number of frameworks and methodologies, templates that allow people to start from a certain base rather than starting from scratch. So let's say you have solved for a similar problem in a certain industry or for a certain work stream. then I think you're not starting from scratch. You're starting off from a bit of a base. The
Right.
fourth thing is all our projects are delivered on site. Okay, that again, I think it allows us to blend or gel a little bit better with the culture rather than trying to do work offshore. So
Hmm.
we don't encourage offshore work, and it's also very hard in our kind of a business to do offshore work because a significant part of our work is change management. So
Hmm.
you have got to be there, sitting with the client, enabling the change management. The last point is we have a pool, okay, in the sense that people are spread across various geographies. So the people who are best suited to serve a company in a particular geography are the ones who are flown into that geography,
Hmm.
right? So just because I've got a big base in India, it doesn't mean that only the Indian team will travel to those countries. So that's another way that we find, that we enable or we make sure that cultural integration or the friction points are reduced.
Hmm. Well said. So, Deepak, I have time for two more questions. My next question is, if you were to look at, say, a crystal ball, what are your thoughts on the future of the consulting business, and where do you see practice in this whole game plan?
I think the industry is set for a major disruption. I'll give you two examples, Ashutosh. One is if you look at strategy consulting firms,
Hmm.
35 years back, strategy was about 50% of the work that strategy consulting firms did.
Hmm.
Today, strategy is 20% of the work that strategy consulting firms do.
Hmm.
Okay, so today the McKinseys and the Bains and the BCGs do a lot of operational consulting work,
Hmm.
operations consulting. There is a reason because I think companies have become more and more smarter. Most companies or most large organizations have got a strategy team, okay, who kind of drafts their strategy, which was not the case,
Hmm.
not so much the case 30, 40 years back. The second bit is companies need more assistance around the how. Okay, how am I going to implement the strategy? Because ideas themselves are democratized today. With the democratization of information, you can get the information that you want. You can get all the strategies in the world that you want.
Hmm.
But the implementation is the challenge because you're still dealing with people. You're still dealing with change management. You're still dealing with those complexities, right? So that is where you need help. So I see that shifting even more towards implementation. And lastly, I think clients are bound to ask you the question as to what is the value that you as a consulting firm are going to add to me.
Hmm.
And this value is not about saying that I'm going to give you a better quality team or I'm going to give you a better quality output because this better cannot be measured.
Correct.
So companies are going to ask you how. I know it's better, but tell me in quantitative terms or
Hmm.
tell me in a terminology that I understand or I can relate to. So this, I think, as a shift, we see it and we want to lead that shift or we want to be at the center of the shift
Hmm.
as far as ROI delivery is concerned.
Great response. And my last question to you, Deepak, and this is going away from practice, but to you personally. You're an active volunteer at the Isha Foundation and a yoga practitioner. How do these activities contribute to your personal and professional life?
Great question. I just hope I'm able to complete this in 1 or 2 minutes, Ashutosh. But I think yoga is unison with the world, correct, and unison within yourself. I feel that this has got a direct implication to my own to what I want to do, which is to impact as many people as I touch. Okay, whether it is people who work in the organization, whether it is my clients, whether it is service providers, suppliers, or just generally a conversation like this, right? So anyone who comes in touch, am I able to make the right impact on these people? Is something that I am personally very conscious of. Okay, and that I think yoga has been a yoga. I should be thanking yoga for teaching me this.
Hmm.
Second, on volunteering, I think volunteering tells you to give up to give up what? To give up prejudices, um, to give up your own identity.
Right.
Okay, so when you volunteer, you're not thinking who I am or what am I doing in my professional life or how much money I have. Right, you're like anybody else who's also volunteering there because everyone has dissolved their identity. If they have not, then you don't call yourself as a volunteer. Correct? So volunteering teaches me that. And volunteering also has taught me something, that even if my aspiration, my personal aspiration is X, but if the organization, or if my team, or if the industry needs me to think of something which is much, much larger than me, then that's the mission that you've got to put out of yourself. So the 1 billion thing that $1 billion valuation or disrupting the consulting space may not be my mission. It is a mission, I think, that the company deserves, or it is a mission that India deserves, because there is no single Indian consulting firm on the world map. And therefore, I feel that this mission makes sense, right? So this is straight out of my volunteering experience, and it is also straight out of the yoga experience.
Wonderful response. Thank you. And on that note, Deepak, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. It was such a pleasure listening to a consultant who's talking about delivery, who's talking about specific and measurable objectives, who's talking about ROI. I think what you're doing at Practus obviously is appealing to a lot of people, which is why you are in so many different countries working with so many different clients. Thank you also for speaking to me about the future of consulting. And finally, thank you for speaking to me about yoga and the Isha Foundation. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Thanks for bringing out all these aspects, and look forward.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.